Good morning. My name is David Shavrin. I'm President and CEO of the Consumer Brands Association. We're very excited to have you join us today for our CPG Speaks session. This series allows the industry to come together to learn important lessons from industry leaders and helps you think differently about your own business. It's my pleasure to welcome Jesper Nordengaard, President North America for Colgate-Palmolive, and a member of the Consumer Brands Board of Directors, which I'm very happy about, by the way. Jesper joined Colgate in 1997 as an associate brand manager and has held several other marketing and innovation-related roles before becoming the worldwide director of global marketing and innovation in 2013. Prior to taking on his current role in 2022, Jesper served as the president of Hill's Pet Nutrition. Today, Jesper and I are going to talk about trends in the CPG industry broadly, and then what he's seeing at Colgate-Palmolive specifically, and then dive into his career journey from an apprentice to the president, and how he approaches high-performing teams and team building with specific examples about his experience at Colgate. Jesper, we're thrilled to have you here today. Thank you very much for being here.
Hey, David, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Excellent. And by the way, we have a great turnout on the CPG Speaks today. So it turns out you're a hot commodity, and we're really happy to have you here. Let's start just talking about the industry, the current state of the industry, and then we'll dive into some specific trends that you're seeing about the consumer and changing consumer needs. But, talk broadly about the current business environment and specifically what trends you're seeing with the consumer that are really grabbing your attention.
Yeah, so there's obviously a lot going on out there right now, right? And I think whether we are in a recession or not, it is clearly difficult for a lot of households in America right now. And I think it's one of the things that's very important for us in an industry to be aware of. I think it requires a different type of focus and innovation than what we've been used to in the maybe last decade. So I think we need to master all price points. I think we need to make sure that we can excite at the entry price points, but also embrace affordable luxury as people are looking for luxury in their lives, as they may be cutting back on other types of spending. So this is an area that we are very focused on, and our science-led approach to innovation, we believe lend itself really well to that environment, and it's one of the things that we push hard across price points, if you will. Another thing that I think is very important and on people's minds is the climate crisis, and I do think that we as an industry we have an obligation and an opportunity to embrace that and really use our innovation muscle to come up with more sustainable solutions, to come together as an industry to solve problems. One of the things that inspire me so much about our industry is that we sell products that people touch every day. And you think of the impact we can have in people's lives with that, it's quite significant. So we're proud of the steps we're taking forward when it comes to sustainable solutions. We launched the first of its kind sustainable toothpaste tube, and we opened the patents, shared it with others so that everybody can benefit from that invention. And I think we need to continue to work as an industry on how we can lower our footprint while we also solve health issues, and we create healthier businesses, more jobs, and all of that. So there's a lot going on, but I'm excited about it because there's a lot of opportunities also coming with where we can help people solve problems in their day-to-day lives.
It's so interesting. One of the things I'm learning, and again, I'm relatively new to this role, is just the depth of your consumer attachment. I mean, you have people who use your brands for their lifetime, but probably their parents use the brands or grandparents. I mean, you have these multi-generational attachments to the consumer, and both serving giving them what they need, but also being closely understanding how those preferences change over time. It's a unique business in that sense. There aren't many others like that, I have to tell you. Let's dive into that a little bit, because Colgate has a wide variety it participates in a wide variety of categories: oral care, pet nutrition, personal care, home care, with tons of brands and products under each one of those. how do you, what are some of the maybe surprising trends you're seeing within those categories, how they may be different, how they may be following similar trajectories and the rest?
Yeah, no, good question. And we have a broad portfolio. We tend to be very focused at what we do, and therefore we believe we're pretty good at the things we focus in on. And we're constantly looking for needs and opportunities to make the world a healthier place as we build our brands. And we're very committed of building a healthier future for all. But one of the most interesting opportunities is actually right under our nose, and that is the crisis in all health. Yeah. According to the World Health Organization, almost half of the world's population will suffer from dental disease. Two-thirds of those would be in middle to low income countries. Go back to the United States. You take children from the age of 2 to 5, 17% of those children would have cavities in their primary teeth. If you come from a low income family, you're 3 times more likely to suffer from that than a high income family, and that will follow you throughout your life. We can fix that. And we are very committed in solving those problems. We have a program that we're very proud of called Bright Smiles, Bright Futures that has touched 1.6 billion children around the world, 56 million of those in America, where we basically give dental, we create dental awareness, checkups, and help educate communities about the importance of dental health. We have buses that are touring around the country and engaging with children and families. We also have education for adults and caregivers. Know your all care OQ. You can go on our website and do the quiz, and you will basically learn how aware you are about the importance of all health. And we know when people take the quiz that they will be more likely to brush twice a day with a fluoride toothpaste, which is the place to start. So that's just one area where I think we can really build brands and we can create growth while we also help solve problems for our communities. If you look to other parts of the Colgate family, at Hills, we are in this month, they're actually clearing the shelters with a strong focus on shelter animals, and they have a lot of science in place to help end pet obesity, which is a very overlooked issue. We have our skincare business, which is very focused on having everybody thrive under the sun. So they're focused on sun protection. So it's a thread through our organization that we're focused on building growth, but we're also focused on creating a healthier future for all. And I think if the people out there listening today and you work for CPG, I hope you find some pride and energy in working on a business that people touch every day, whatever area you're in. And I just invite you to just think about what can you do to help forward health in our communities and play a role in people's life. And while you do that, you will also be building brands. It's one of the things that motivated me to work in this industry for all those years on different types of businesses all around the world. But I do find a higher purpose in that.
Yeah, there's something about the daily use. We've said a lot of times the average American uses our members' products 42 times a day, roughly, and there's something about not only that, the intensity of that relationship, right? But you're solving, to your point, you're solving problems for people not only every day, but every hour of every day, sometimes every minute of every day. But people come because they're trying to help themselves with a challenge they're having. Super interesting, really compelling statement. Let's switch up a little bit, talk about business, and of course everybody always wants to talk about on the technology front. Over the past few years, Colgate has made a number of investments in digital and data, especially as it relates to the digital consumer. Can you share about those investments and initiatives and the results you've seen from them? This for an industry that for most of its life has worked through other channels, and by the way, still does very productively, there is this direct relationship, particularly digitally, with consumers. And how do you think about that?
Yeah, absolutely, David. And I'm very proud of the progress we made as an organization. I think what's important to remember when you talk digital transformation, that's a means to an end. At the end of the day, we're here to build our brands. We're here to build those relationships with people. And that's not so different from how we were brought up. Digital just gives us an opportunity to do that more effectively, to be more direct in our targeting and create better experiences for people. So I always tell people we don't sell our brands to do digital transformation. We're leveraging digital transformation to give people better experiences. And I like to think about it in a pretty simple way, that we need to make it as easy as possible to shop our products, no matter what modality you're in, and repeat that purchase. Data gives us a better opportunity to truly tap into people's journeys, how you consume our products throughout a lifetime. And if we do our job well, we can be part of your journey, whether it's all health, or it's pet care, or whatever it might be, throughout your life journey. And I think that also allows us to think differently about return on investment. Instead of thinking return on investment on a single transaction, you can think return on investment throughout that relationship. So you need these days a chief relationship officer, and that really changes the game. The other thing is that digital transformation, to me, is of course important in how we engage with consumers and households, people. But it's also important across the enterprise. We can run our operations way more efficiently when we embrace data and when we embrace technology. And it's been great to see how our organization across the world has really tapped into that opportunity.
By the way, I did see your e-commerce sales grew by double digits last year, 2022. Not everybody gets to do that. You want to give us a hint? A best practice or a hint for the rest of the industry about how you were able to do that?
Yeah, no, congratulations to a very strong team that we have in place in e-com. And there's a couple of things that the team is doing consistently. But first and foremost, be clear on your assortment. Not all retailers are created equally. So you need to have an assortment that fits to the environment where you're trying to sell. One thing that I've learned in my years of working in e-commerce and digital transformation, I started out in my days at Hills, is really to trust and embrace subject matter experts. This space moves really fast, and there are things that I just don't know. So I need to get the right team in place to actually do that. And trusting and empowering our subject matter experts has been front and center to our progress. And of course, also be on top of your game, which means that this is a game that moves really fast. So you need to track data and have a team that is comfortable pivoting and responding to data as we go. And there are a number of other things that the team has done, but I'm really pleased to see how we are continue to strengthening this muscle, if you will, but also how it's being embedded in the business. It's not e-commerce over brick and mortar. It's, as I said before, it is about making it as easy as possible to shop our products, no matter what modality you're in. And think of your own life, right? We are sometimes in the physical world, sometimes we're in the virtual world. It depends, and we need to make it as seamless as possible to engage with us and have a good experience. And the team has really taken that to heart, and I'm pleased with the progress we're making.
So, there are a number of different channels then in which you can interact with that consumer, and whether it's on communication or whether it's sales or a whole range of different interactions with a consumer. So talk about how you think about marketing in that sense. How do you come up with is there a way you think about telling a consistent story across all those channels? How do you think about marketing in a place where it gets more and more complex about how you're interacting with the consumers? Just not one lane anymore.
Yeah. Now, listen, I think sometimes we got to be careful. We don't make it more complicated than it is. I still think that how we all trained in marketing is still right. So you need to have strong brand growth plans. You need to be clear on your strategy. And when that's in place, then you can empower a team to run really fast, and you can ensure that you build brands consistently and you don't dilute your message. But in that process, you also got to recognize that with digital, there's a different handover point than there was in the past. where in the old world, the way I was trained, it was quite linear, and you basically had your budget plan, you created your advertising, and then you rolled it out. Now things move way faster. So that's, in my view, this strategy document has become even more important, because if everybody understands what the strategy is, what the sandbox is, you can empower people to run fast and execute on the brand. So some things are very much the same, but of course there's some new technologies that we all need to understand and embrace, and then also accept when you need a subject matter expert, and because this area moves so fast that you can't be enough in the know to sit and execute on a day-to-day basis. And I've learned a lot through that. I learned a lot through the subject matter experts that we've hired, and I think mixing up the traditional brand building discipline with the new technologies, I think is super powerful.
Super interesting. So let's talk about your journey. Listen, you started with Colgate in 2000 as a product manager in the Nordic countries. Can you share with us initially, what drew you to the company, why you joined the team, how you got interested in this space broadly?
Yeah, no, and listen, I spent my entire adult life with this company. I landed an apprenticeship while I started business school. So all throughout business school, I got to work on these iconic brands. And I started in Denmark. You can probably tell from my accent that I'm not born and raised in Kansas, but I got to start my journey there, and actually studying while I worked on these iconic brands was super powerful. A lot of the other students, they got the theory, I got the theory, and I got to work on the brands. I was quickly drawn to what we just talked about with the products that are in all these households. The most penetrated brand on the planet is Colgate. And the fact that you touch people every day and you solve problems every day was always very motivating to me. And then there was the people. Colgate is a very international company. And I remember around the lunch table, all these different accents and experiences, from someone from Guatemala, someone who worked in Ecuador. And it was so inspiring to me. And from very early on, I knew I wanted to be part of this company, and I wanted an international career. I wanted to move around. I also often think about all the people who were so vested in my success from my early days, where I knew nothing, right? Mm-hmm. I didn't even have my bachelor yet, but they really invested time in training me. I'm in touch still with a lot of these people, and it's also a reminder to me to pay it forward. And that's another thing I really like about our company culture, that we train each other, and we actually train and facilitate trainings for our organization. And it's something I take very seriously, that if someone want to have a conversation with me, wherever you are in the organization, I'll find time for you, because it's just part of how we think. And a lot of people invested that in me, and I need to pay that forward.
Well, let's dig into that a little bit about, again, what you've taken from your career and then how you kind of apply that organizationally. You've obviously progressed up the ladder in several positions, and done well there at Colgate, with a whole range of different responsibilities, right? And I'm sure exposure to a lot of different kinds of businesses and a lot of different kinds of leaders. What are the key learnings that you carried with you through those roles? And then, how do you use that, and how do you help apply that in your position today in terms of building your organization and making sure that the people who work for you have the best experience they can have? Yeah, no, it's an excellent question. And I think learning is a key point, right? Lifelong learning. But I learned a lot, not only from the jobs I've had, but from moving around the world, right? Growing up in Denmark, worked in Germany, I worked in Switzerland on European-wide businesses. I moved to France, and then from Paris, I moved to Topeka, Kansas. Those are very similar, by the way, I've heard. A little bit different. We'll get back to that, but I had a fantastic time in Kansas. But one thing you learn as an individual, in my view, when you move around, and if you have an open mind, is not right, it's not wrong, it's just this, because they're just different cultures. Like if you read the culture code, you kind of learn to adapt to that so that you can influence and be impactful. And then obviously you learn from the experiences on the job.
when you work at Colgate, you will lead a diverse team, international team, people from different parts of the world. So that experience in understanding culture and being able to navigate it is something that I sometimes take for granted. But then I realized I spent my entire adult life working with diverse teams, and I think that's very helpful every day. And I think the notion of reflection is incredibly important, and also humbleness about what you learned. So I try and reflect every week on how my week has been. Where did I add value? Where did I make the life easier and better for my organization? And where have I maybe held them back a little bit? So I continue to calibrate. I think it's very important as a leader that we sometimes recognize that we can add too much value. And finding
That's a great quote, by the way. Add too much value.
So, yeah.
Well, that's right. Yeah. Well, we've got into that a little bit. I was going to ask you about if you were going to define your leadership style or what the elements would be around it, but maybe you've gotten to some of those elements, but I'll ask you anyway. If you were going to talk about your leadership style, how would you define it? How do you describe it to people?
So I will, my leadership style would be empowering and engaging and based on trust. But that also means that I count on you to be accountable, because empowerment and trust only works if I know that you got it. And that doesn't mean that you just walk away and solve every problem, but I trust that if you encounter a problem, you'll raise your hand and say, I need help, right? I think it's a little bit like distributed authority, that if you manage to do that well, an organization can move really, really fast, and you break down the command control, which slow you down. But of course, if things go wrong, they can also go really wrong in that context, right? So I think for my leadership style to work, I try and do a good job in communicating what I expect, be clear on the strategy, and then I give people the freedom to operate within that. But I also expect that when we have agreed that this is the strategy, that we then stick to it and we don't go out and try and redo it. That was a little bit dangerous. I'm sure there's some people from my organization listening, but I will say I'm pretty energetic, and I try and walk the talk every day.
That's so powerful. I talk a lot about trust as a organizational need and objective. There's a great book on that, by the way. It's called The Speed of Trust, but it gets right to your point, which is if you can build a trusting environment, you can move really fast and be very agile and flexible. And as somebody who worked in the federal government a number of years, which is the ultimate low trust environment, ultimately what you have is a lot of process to deal with people's lack of trust, right? And that just slows everything down. Now, it's super powerful. Well, now that you mentioned the fact that you have some members of your team on the call today, what advice do you have for your folks or for anybody who's just starting out at Colgate-Palmolive and looking to grow their career with the company? What's your key piece of advice for somebody just entering the business?
So point one, I think anyone who get our best, that should be a license to live their dream. So wherever you start, whatever your dreams are, that should be, you're invited to do that. And if you live our values, right? So you be kind, you be inclusive, you be courageous. Of course, paired with being an effective in what you do and good at what you do, then you will very quickly be able to impact this iconic business. So I really encourage you to lean in and focus also on your leadership early on. That's something that I wish people would have pushed me more on early in my career. Focus on our leadership principles and building trust. That's one of the things we're that's very precious to us at Colgate. Trust is the first ingredient to a healthy team. Focus on how you imagine the future, which is another thing leaders do. And then let's commit to impact, right? Let's make sure that we also get stuff done today. And if you do those things, then you can have a phenomenal career here. You will meet amazing people. You will meet people with a lot of different accents, and you can get to experience working in very different parts of the world. I never thought growing up that I would spend many years working out of Kansas, but I had some great years of my life in Kansas, and it kind of became, all of that has added to the fabric that's now me. My best advice is lean into it.
That's such good advice. In particular, I really like the whole reference to think about leadership right from the beginning. I think too often people, and probably me in my early career, I thought, well, I'm not the manager, so leadership's for somebody else. But there's a lot of different ways to express leadership.
And David, I think that's such an important point that you don't need to have a big team to be a leader, right? We all impact the organization we're in. So you lead, right? And the world is more and more matrixed. So I really reflecting on your impact and have that self-awareness on how you show up on a good day, on a bad day. And I think is something I think the entire world it would do the entire world good to think about our impact as we go out and do our thing.
So interesting. Okay, so for the audience here, before we transition to our final set of topics, I want to remind everyone that we've saved time at the end of today's session for questions. Please submit those using the Q&A panel at the bottom of the screen. We like good questions, so please take advantage of that opportunity. So, let's talk a little bit also about building the right team. We talked a little bit about that already, but it's no small feat to achieve this success that you have across so many different categories. I mean, it's a lot of different consumers, a lot of different kinds of businesses. A large part of that comes down to building the right team. And could you share with us a little bit about how you approach that, how you think about that? What are there individual or group characteristics that you focus on? How do you think about building the team that's going to carry you through challenges?
Yeah, I think I'm very passionate about this. And when I reflect on my life and my experiences, there's nothing I did by myself. I was always part of a team, and I always felt part of something bigger. And I think it's important that we remember that, right? So when things are really, really great, then there's a lot of standing on the shoulders of a lot of people. Yeah. It also makes it a little bit easier when things are not so great, because we can lift each other up and support each other. But I throughout my life, I really thrived and been fortunate to be on teams where people cared about each other. And I think building truly high-performing teams, that is both a skill and an art, and it takes passion. I think it takes accepting as a leader that is the job. That what you do is actually building a strong group of individuals, and a team is the most effective teams I worked on would be teams where I was certainly not really needed as a leader, because they were like a jazz band, and basically they will, depending on the topic we discussed, someone would step up and take the leadership. They will facilitate decision making. They will keep each other honest, and sometimes I just have to step in to correct a little bit if they were jamming too much, right? To use a music analogy. But to get there takes a lot of time. It takes that you build the trust. It takes also that you invest the time. My leadership team and I, we have a quarterly what we call self-care day. So it's a little bit like, lack of a better word, like a date night for the team. There can be no operational topics. We just work on how we work together. We work on trust, and we actually measure, and we hold each other accountable for how we're performing. And that's super important, because on an easy day, you don't feel this, right? But when things are not going according to plan, if you have a team that really understand each other's strengths and each other's weaknesses, you can actually amplify each other's strengths, and you can numb the weaknesses, because we're all wired a little bit differently. So one of the things we're focused on is recognizing each other's superpowers, and through that actually creating a really, really strong team, because we all bring different things to the table, which is quite immense. So, and I will also say, I don't think this is like a destination, it's a journey, and you'll constantly have opportunities to improve, to learn something new. New people come into the team. You need to be aware of how you welcome new members to the team. A very strong team, the weakness of a strong team can be that it's hard to join it, right? And that self-awareness of a team is very important. So it's an area that I'm very focused on. The other thing that I think is important is a notion of what I call forced collisions. So you got to break the silos, and you got to create structures and processes where the left hand knows what the right hand is doing, and you force people to the table before you go live with things. And that can sometimes be difficult because it creates friction, but that's a healthy friction. Where you get the right people around the table at the right time to make a decision, and then we will execute better.
There's so many powerful things in that, Jesper. I got to tell you, in particular, starting with the primary role of the leaders building the team, right? There's so many folks who think it's about them, right? And it really, the role of a great leader is to create the circumstances for other people to be successful, right? And I do have to, since you raised it, I do have to explore a little bit, since it's such a powerful idea, the sort of date night for the team. Is it, so you're not talking about outcomes or performance, you're talking about how they get together and talk about how we work together. What's working? I really like that. I don't know. I didn't understand what was happening over here. That must be hard to introduce people to. It's a new kind of concept.
Yeah, I do think they enjoy the days, but we have some structure to it. We all read the Fearless Organization by Amy Edmondson, which I recommend people to read, because there's a really good manual to the power of trust and also the downside of fear. And then we reflected on that. We are tracking our progress by scoring each other, and we are also having the entire organization score us on trust index. We're very committed in building trust in the organization, and we put that into our goals for the year to continue to raise the trust index. And we discuss how we make progress and when we don't. And these things can be measured. When I say no operational topics, it means we have plenty of time where we review our P&L performance, our share data, all of that stuff. This day is just about the health of our team, what has worked in recent months, and what do we need to do differently, and where are we on this journey? And then obviously also celebrating progress a little bit and discuss setbacks.
So interesting. Well, let's talk a little bit about very interestingly, a lot of success hinges on financial performance, right? That's the thing we talk about all the time. That's what a lot of people pay a lot of attention to for valid reasons. But there are those pieces that you often can't assign a number to. For you, what does success look like for your team? And how do you recognize when that success has been achieved, even though it may not be immediately financially determinative?
Yeah. Listen, I firmly believe that when you have healthy teams and healthy leadership teams, you'll see it in the financial performance. Yeah. But there are things you can measure before you get there. I mentioned that we hold ourselves accountable to a trust index that we measure every quarter, and we also score each other and the team on how we're performing on certain metrics within our team. So that's something you can measure on a more qualitative notice, on a more qualitative basis. I think what you can also see is, if I'm not there, is the team coming to a resolution, or people coming to me trying to sway me and pull me into the details. I think when I see my team really performing, then I become less important in terms of pushing for decisions and so forth, right? You see the quality of the team when things are tough, not when they're easy, right? And that's the other thing. You see how quickly does bad news get to you versus just the good news. A good news organization, I would submit, struggles with trust because people are afraid to bring in the good news. As leaders, we need to create an environment where people are comfortable telling you, I have a problem, I need help, so that small problems don't become big problems. So those are things that qualitatively or quantitatively that you can measure on an ongoing basis.
There's a great quote from Colin Powell that I like, and he said, when you get to certain levels in an organization, he's talking about obviously being a general in the military and the rest, that people should only be bringing you problems, that your role is to deal with problems, and that people telling you good stuff is a waste of your time, which I think is a really powerful way to think about it. Your job is to consume the tough news sometimes.
It does really resonates with me, because I really, as leaders, we need to help troubleshoot. And sometimes our teams are struggling with conundrums, and we have to help resolve that. And the sooner you get visibility, the sooner you can help and deploy the right resources.
Fantastic. Well, listen, questions are coming in. So settle in. Here, we got some questions for you.
Yeah.
So we got a question from Gary Stiebel. I'm sorry, Gary, if I mispronounced the last name. David, oh, thank you. Correctly identified you as one of the world's best consumer marketers. That's saying something nice about both of us. But you're also an exceptional professional marketer, whether to veterinarians, dentists, or dermatologists. Any thoughts on the importance of professional marketing in addition to consumer marketing? And I guess implicit in that question is kind of how are they different? How do you think about them differently?
Yeah. Well, thanks, Gary, and good to hear from you. Listen, I really think it's about as leaders and especially as marketers and entrepreneurs, you got to be very curious, and I think you got to listen well. And when I got to work on the GABA businesses, which was a business we bought in Europe, that was my first exposure to what we call the demand generator model, where you basically first sell through dentists, pharmacists, and then you push the products into general retail. And that was a new way of doing marketing for me. But I quickly saw how powerful these brands were. And it was not described anywhere in any of the books that I've read or what I learned at school. So I think when you then move around the business and you understand the nature of the business, you can take a little bit of everything and you can put it together and create something very unique. We did that at Hills, where we combined the selling to professionals with very strong traditional CPG skills in consumer communication, distribution push, and all that stuff. But I think it's about connecting the dots. And if you look at the most successful companies in the world, they've done just that, right? If you look up and think of an Apple with the whole iTunes setup and all of that. And I think we need to break those silos and be open to other experiences so that we can truly reach the full potential of our businesses. So super interesting. At the end of the day, I'm sort of extrapolating here, is the professional consumer fundamentally different than the end user consumer in the sense of what they value, what they are looking for from you? So listen, people are people, right? And I think that's one of the first things I also realized when both on my early days on Elmex Marital, but also on the Hills business, that we tend to think of the professionals as this institution. They're also impacted by the questions asked from pet parents in the case of a vet, or the advertising they see or what they see on Google. But of course, they have another need. And I think in working efficiently with the profession, I think means really building a relationship where they feel that they can input into your organization with their thoughts, so that it's not just marketing, but it's actually true science. And that's what we have embraced as a company. We base all our innovation on science, and that is heavily anchored in academia and in working with subject matter experts. And I think that makes it a little bit deeper. And I think that's an important principle as you build this. It's not just about telling a story. You need to make sure that the science is really there when you scratch the surface. Super interesting. We talked about the importance of trust, organizational trust, and also need to be adept and fast moving. Implicit in that is risk. And sometimes people aren't always comfortable with risk, and you kind of have to encourage some degree of risk taking. Can you talk a little bit about how you approach that and think about it, and encourage your teams to be fearless as well at times, to lean into, how do you encourage people to take smart risks? So one of our values at Colgate is we are courageous, and it's something we talk a lot about to define what it means, right? And I think sometimes we mistake when I say we are courageous. That doesn't mean that we are foolhardy or reckless, right? This means that we do what's right, not what's easy, even if it means that we're going to get to where we want to be in a little bit slower fashion than otherwise. It means that we stand up for what we believe, and we have the courage to speak our mind in a meeting. Also, when it goes against the general point of view. Also, when it means disagreeing with me. It is always very inspiring to me when we have debates, when people push back on me. I love that, because it tells me that it gives me that feeling that our trust model is working. And it inspires me that our people actually bring their views to the table. So I think it's again back to trust. You create an environment where that's possible. And then when we do place bigger bets, I think it's important that we've done our homework and that the organization understands we're going to ask this team to run this risk, but we're all with them. We're not going to sit and think a point afterwards, right? And that's where planning becomes important, because especially when you place bigger bets, it's important that we thought about the potential outcomes, and so that we can really support each other and quickly pivot should it not go according to plan. But I think in a big organization, it is something that's important to focus on, because it is easy to default to keeping your head low and not sticking your neck out, and that's a net loss for the company.
They're great. So just to wrap up, and again, this has been a fantastic conversation. I very much appreciate the time you've devoted to this and talking to our broader community. And this is the people listening are part of the broader CPG community. And, you've touched on a little bit already, but at the end of the day, what excites you about being in this business? What excites you about taking care of the consumers you take care of?
I think it's really about the impact we can have, right? As I said before, people consume our products every day, and we can impact public health while creating growth, jobs, prosperity, social mobility, and we can impact the outcome for the planet in our focus on lowering plastic consumption, coming up with new ingenious ideas on how you can have a clean home, a healthy body, while not leaving a footprint on the planet. And then, the fact that our businesses are so complex with different functions, that's always very inspiring to me when I get to sit with our supply chain folks and understand their part of the world and how they create magic every day. That's the kind of stuff that's money can't buy for me. And that's why I dedicated my life to this industry and this company, and I have a lot of fun doing it. And the thing is also, David, you learn every day, right? It's really I get to work with these amazing, talented people, and there's not a day where I don't learn something new. I have this wow. I mean, that person works here and created this plan or this document or had this idea, and I think that's something that inspires me a lot.
Fantastic. Well, we come up to the top of the hour. Jesper, thank you so much. I very much appreciate the time, the deep thinking. I hope a lot of people in the industry, particularly young people coming up, listen to your remarks, because I think they're very powerful about the importance of trust in an organization, leadership right from the get-go, building great teams and culture, just super powerful. So thank you very much appreciated having you today.
Thanks, David. It was a good conversation. I appreciate your leadership for our industry.
Thank you. So for the audience, be sure to check out our education and events page for upcoming offerings from Consumer Brands. A link to this page is in the chat. And thank you so much for joining us. And again, Jesper, can't thank you enough, and look forward to seeing you soon.